Playing off a couple of screens. Esquivel to Garcia. Off the deflection. Los Fresnos comes back and wins. Now Santa Maria will put up a three. Bang! Santa Maria!
Here's Warner. Here comes a headed jam. Counted for two. Field. Adios! And the Falcons win on a walk-off. And it's saved. What a game.
Left. That is gone.
Rafa Perez. That's my play. Off the backboard. Counting and a win.
And a win. Ryan Perez wins the game for the Santa Rosa Warriors, and they go nuts. And why not?
Live once again here from Luke Fruia, Buick GMC and Cadillac. And this is going to be a great show. I'm Jacob Young. This is Rio Sports Live Network. We have so much to get to, so much to talk about. It's officially this time of year. It's honestly, some may say it's the most wonderful time of the year. Why is that? Well, it's spring break for a lot of people. It's also March Madness week, too, which means the NCAA tournament for men's and women's basketball starts this week. There were some games already yesterday. What were those games? 2 games for the play-in side of the bracket. That is the first 4. There was a couple more, I believe, for the first 4 today. There was also the NIT last night. And so very much indeed exciting. Then, of course, as we do get into the RGV side of things, one thing and one thing only. And there is this. None other than the week of playoffs start this weekend as well. This week for soccer, Thursday, Friday, are really the 2 main days that you will see all the playoff soccer matches get taken place from, well, the upper valley of Pioneer, McAllen High School, McAllen Memorial to Brownsville. Brownsville, Porter, of course, Lopez, both of those 2 teams, though, for the boys, they are on the road, have to travel to the upper valley to play, which is always exciting. It's always mainly for that first round for soccer, for basketball, for volleyball, for even baseball. Except baseball kind of gets a little confusing because it is a 3-game series most likely, or more than anything. So really for the other sports besides the basketball, or besides the baseball and the softball, you will have, and besides football, because football is a completely different district and divisions and all that fun stuff. You will have teams in the first round mainly flipping to see who will get to host who in general. And yes, that one unlucky team may have to travel that one year, but there's a good, strong chance that they will play each other again the next year in playoffs, if not the next year, every other year, basically. And so it gets to that point of where, okay, that team that got to host at one time, now they get to go on the road and will have to face off against that team at their own place. And so it does create some hostile environments, and that's all it's about is, for soccer. And, well, from then on, it is win and you advance. You lose, unfortunately, your season is done and dusted until 2027. So very exciting, like we mentioned, this whole entire week. Let's get you up to speed on RSL Network. We had a couple of games already take place for softball here today. Let's, of course, get you updated with what the games may have been. So it's very exciting, like we mentioned before, that, of course, yesterday and even the day before, we had baseball coverage for you all. And so, of course, this Wednesday we had the 2 softball games, 10 and 11 a.m. at Raymondville and Brownsville Rivetta. And that was exciting for Raymondville. They played Harlingen High School. And for Brownsville Rivetta, they played Harlingen South in district. So that was pretty interesting, of course, then it's the show today. And then tomorrow, 6 and 7 p.m., we have Sherryland Pioneer High School. They'll take on Brownsville Porter. Then, again, that's at Sherryland Pioneer because that's Pioneer. And then Sherryland High School, they face off against Brownsville Lopez at Richard Thompson Stadium. That one is going to be a match to witness in general. It's going to be very exciting. And then Friday for now, we have one soccer match that's at San Benito. It's San Benito versus Wesco High School. That one should be a great one. Nothing on Saturday on tap for Saturday, though, for you all. Which, again, it's very exciting. This whole entire week, of course, filled with those matches. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we are really going to break down with the March Madness. It's my favorite time of year. It's my favorite show of the year because I get to do this and get to really break down all this March Madness. Try to get a guest for today. Didn't necessarily end up happening. It's all right because, once again, it's just going to be so much fun to talk about. Give you all, of course, my insight on what the Final Four most likely will be on the men's side, and, of course, what the Final Four most likely will be on the women's side, too. So it's a lot of that, and I'm very excited to bring you all that coverage, of course, coming up here in this hour of, well, just this showtime. We do start off, though, with, of course, a couple of big matchups that are, of course, with the playoffs coming up tomorrow. Like we mentioned, both of those Sharyland games will be very interesting. Those are 31-5A versus 32-5A, and those have a lot of implications because it's interesting. You talk about you win the district, or either you draw for it, but both teams, of course, they're facing off against teams that would likely win the district on the 30-5A. Let's remind ourselves as well, starting off with the Sharyland High School versus Sharyland Pioneer game, or Sharyland High School versus none other than Brownsville Lopez. Brownsville Lopez, in the early season, fielded an ineligible player in all of those matches that he was fielded in as they got caught with it. What ended up happening is they had to forfeit those matches. They played 3 district games in that time. For a second, everyone, including myself, thought, okay, they're not going to make the playoffs. Boy, were we wrong, but they had to win a lot of matches, and they had to secure a playoff spot and got it pretty late in the season that they're necessarily not used to collecting a playoff spot. In the end, they knew that they weren't going to win district. That was the biggest thing for the Lobos. And the Lobos, all of a sudden, as we get into it once again for Brownsville Lopez, really quickly, where did they finish off in this season? And why I would say that they could potentially in 31-5A win the district is because, well, they were that good as well, just in general. They finished 3rd in district. And that's exactly why it's 2v3 with Sharyland High School having to face off against Brownsville Lopez. That's going to be a very exciting matchup. And both teams are outstanding. The only thing that I would say is for Sharyland High School, the matches that they lost, especially against their rivals, was interesting, to say the least, because it's a match that, in my eyes, at least, I don't think they should have lost. I think Sharyland High School should have been able to win that game and would have been district champions, but then we wouldn't have gotten a matchup that I've known to love, that I've seen happen multiple times, not necessarily covered. I've only covered it once in my life, but we go back to it. It's such a fantastic matchup because you don't know how both these two teams will face off against each other. Now, it's interesting to note both these two teams, they've played against each other at least twice before in the playoffs. One time, that was the ride for Sharyland High School to make it to close to the regional finals, I believe, one of the years. Either way, it was very exciting where Lopez had all the momentum. A handball inside the box, all of a sudden it's a red card. And then another play happens, another red card. And all of a sudden, Sharyland High School, they're playing with 9 players on the team. It goes into the 2 allocated extra time periods, and Sharyland High School win. They scored the match winner in the end on that one. So here's the average goal scoring for both Lopez and Sharyland High School. Lopez normally average about 1 to 2 goals. It's 1.9, so really 2 goals in the first half. In the second half, really average 1.4, so about 1 goal in that second half for a final of 4.3, so 4 goals. For Sherryland High School, and this is about as I would expect, because I still remember it was one of the first district matches of the season, but there was a good chance that McAllen Memorial, or not even McAllen Memorial, the team that they were playing against, but Sherryland High School could have scored more, but they were very conservative in scoring goals. And their average is just over a goal in the first half at 1.8, so about 2, and then 0.8 in the second. So they average about close to 3 goals per half. Now, this is going to be a very defensive-minded matchup in general. The tactics are going to be interesting, to say the least. There is a possibility that even with Sherryland High School being home, that they might drop back 4 defenders and maybe do a 4-2-3-1, potentially with 1 striker up front. There is a good chance that it is going to be one of those matches, because I don't expect both teams to necessarily want to go all out on attack, because that's just not how these two teams are known to play. Let's again look at, of course, the scoring margins for Lopez High School. And well, Lopez, they did win 4-2, but again, it goes to the times that they were forfeited with their games that they play, their matches played. Winning 5-2 against SJA, forfeited again. And so a lot of those matches, yes, you can base a lot on it, like as in, for example, playing against Porter. This is the whole reason why they got the 3-2 at the same time that these are forfeited. That wasn't even a district match. They played against each other in a non-district tournament. And then you go down in that district play. They did have to, so actually that was a district match. Those 3 district matches were Porter, Donna, North, and Brownsville Ravenna. All 3 of those would have been 1-0 victories, but those are forfeited, so you take those away and give them 3 losses in district. So they started off 0-3. They played against Pace 3-0. They beat Wesco East 8-1. They lost in PKs, I believe, to Harlingen South High School, 2-2 draw in regulation. 8-0 against Edkel Chelsea, 10-0 against Mercedes, 6-0 against Donna, and then lost in again PKs to Brownsville Porter. I believe actually they ended up going into extra time, I believe is what they decided, because, well, both teams wanted all 3 points because it was going to be key for just a potential district chance, I believe, or something like that. Anyways, I remember the RSL Network were covering that match, and then you moved on down the line. After all those games, 10-0 Mercedes, and then, of course, we all know that they defeated Donna. And then have to play against Sherryland High School on the road tomorrow at 7 p.m. That's going to be exciting. Again, 6 p.m. is the Pioneer Porter matchup. And so, again, those 2 matches, they can be a toss-up. The Lopez matchup, though, against Sherryland High School, that's where things get very interesting and scary. Big thing, I'll say this even before the matchup. Lopez have to get on the board first. They have to set the tone and get goals. I'm not saying set the tone by fouling, all of that, because there is a way to set the tone, but not even doing that. There's a way to get inside of players' heads without causing a foul that's in a dangerous area that could be a set-piece opportunity for Sherryland High School to take advantage of. We've seen that happen before. It's all about Sherryland High School. Well, it's all about, for the most part, if Brownsville Lopez can play a style of soccer where they do a little bit of challenges that are rough but are completely fair, they get into Sherryland's heads that Sherryland has to be desperate, has to be hard about it. And then all of a sudden, they were the ones that Lopez are the ones that reap the benefits by getting those fouls called for them. And then all of a sudden, there's some bookings on the other side for Sherryland High School. We've seen it happen so many times before in soccer. It's going to be one of those matches, I believe. Tones will be set. And I don't expect for the person who is going to be calling that match tomorrow, that is on the schedule, that is Nacho. For him, I don't expect for it to end in regulation. I expect it to go into extra time, and for a winner to be decided there, I don't expect it to go into PKs, just into extra time. That's what I see. I wouldn't be shocked. It's going to be exciting. I cannot wait for that one in particular. Now, again, we go into the second matchup. That's actually the first matchup of that evening tomorrow. It is Sherryland Pioneer taking on Brownsville Porter. Brownsville Porter having to also travel on the road to Sherryland Pioneer is something that's pretty cool. Let's even before we get into the matchup, 18-3-2 overall for the Pioneer Diamondbacks. This is a remarkable turnaround from the last couple of seasons. We go even to before we head into 24-25, how about 23-24, which was basically 2024, to say the least. You go to that page, and they were 8-7-1 overall, really 4-5 in district. They did make the playoffs in that fourth spot, I believe, and losing to Brownsville Lopez 4-1. And so I say all of that because this team was slowly getting better throughout the years. They were slowly getting to the point of where, okay, the Pioneer Diamondbacks now in soccer can definitely challenge for a district title with the likes of Sherryland High School and 31-5A. This was a big thing to think about. Now there's competition for Sherryland High School to try and be better. And so as I say that, it was one of those things of, okay, this is good. This is good for just in general. So it's crazy to really think of how this all has gone for this team, this great team of Pioneer, the Diamondbacks. Now it's going to be very difficult. I still would believe that the edge would go to the Porter Cowboys, but I'm not too sure. We're going to look at it once again. Going all the way down again to that next year, which again was, 24-25 season as well. Had them play against Lopez on the road and losing 3-0. And so Pioneer said, okay, we don't want to be facing them at least for this year. And they got their wish by, in 2026, this year, getting to play against the Porter Cowboys and winning district 15-1. So they're the 1 seed. But again, it goes by divisions. And so for the Porter Cowboys, it's not necessarily that they did bad, because the truth is they didn't. It's just that divisions exist now. And, well, for example, Pioneer Diamondbacks on a completely different division because they have to play against the Porter Cowboys, who, according to Max Preps, also won the district. But anyways, this is going to be a very challenging match. Both of these two teams, how does this look? We're going into trying to preview the match is what I was trying to look at, just to give you all really the extensive look of, okay, the goal scored for both sides. Excuse me. The goal scored for both sides. Porter under just about 2 goals in that first half. So really they've scored on average about 2 goals in the first half as well. For Pioneer, it's under 2 goals. It's 1.3. So really just averaging about 1 goal per half. And under 2 goals again in that second half, or under a goal in that second half too. So it's definitely close, because both of these two schools, according to Max Preps, average about 3.4 to 3.2 goals per match. And then going into, of course, their shootout. So going into the PKs, because we have to remember that just in case it does go into extra time. And just in case it does go into penalty kicks. Porter have the advantage with scoring all 5. And Pioneer, of course, with only scoring 4, most likely missing 1 per PK. Now, of course, that could be on the list of just 1. But that's something to definitely think of. It's going to be a great match. It goes back to this for the Pioneer Diamondbacks to pull off what could potentially be considered an upset. Simple. Very, very simple. They have to score first. They have to keep their crowd behind them. This is I would say it's their biggest match. It's not. Because they played against Lopez before. They've made it to the playoffs before. They've done things like that. And so it goes half and half. It really does go half and half. But, again, this is one to watch. This is one I will be the commentator of. As for how can Brownsville Porter win this, play soccer like they normally have been. Take advantage of opportunities. Take advantage of those set pieces. Wind will most likely be a factor tomorrow evening. If I had to guess, the wind would probably pick up to about maybe 8 miles an hour. So that's a lot of that. Like we mentioned, looking forward to it, looking forward to calling that match tomorrow. And, I mean, just a couple of final details to be said, but I'm excited to bring you all the coverage for the 2026 UAL Bi-District Playoffs, because remember, the road to Georgetown starts this weekend. We are back after this. When we return, we are going to switch to talking about March Madness and, of course, the college basketball, well, just the college basketball world. We'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.
100 years ago, in the heart of the Rio Grande Valley, a spark was born. From the first dreamers who stepped onto these grounds, Texas Southmost College has stood as a promise that determination can overcome any challenge. Join us as we honor our past, celebrate our present, and ignite the future together. Texas Southmost College, 100 years strong, and the next 100 begin with you.
Elevation, AT4, AT4X, Denali. Case closed. Fruia GMC, we're professional grade.
I fell on a loose towel at the grocery store, and now they're saying it's my fault. Do you think you could help?
Of course I can help. You should be focused on feeling better.
Oh, thank you, Law Champ. Hey, do you think I can get a selfie?
Of course.
This is the island where adulting takes its own vacation. South Padre is more than an island. It's the island.
Rev up your future with Texas Southmost College's Auto Body Repair Program. In just 2 semesters, you'll gain the skills to become an auto body repair specialist. Learn using industry standard iCar Academy to get you job ready fast. If you're ready to drive your career forward, TSC's Auto Body Repair Program is the place to start. Classes are filling fast, so visit tsc.edu and apply today.
No importa en cuál etapa de tu vida te encuentres, Texas Southmost College está aquí para ayudarte a progresar. Ya sea que estés empezando desde cero, cambiando de carrera o adquiriendo nuevas habilidades, TSC tiene programas accesibles diseñados para adaptarse a tus metas. Es hora de dar el siguiente paso. Piensa en grande, piensa claramente, piensa en TSC.
Kenny Perez came from a small town in Texas. At Kenny Perez Law, we won't stop fighting until our clients get what's rightfully theirs. We're right by your side, no matter what. Call Kenny Perez Injury Lawyers today, 956-999-1111.
Back live, we go once again to hear from none other than beautiful Luke Fruia Motors, Luke Fruia Buick GMC and Cadillac off of Price Road, Old Alice Road. Should be a very exciting, of course, show. Like we mentioned, I'm Jacob Young. This is Rio Sports Live Network. We mentioned it before we went to the break, and, well, we're coming back to it. And that is talking about none other than March Madness. Should be a very exciting, of course, topic to talk about. Yes, indeed, we start off with, of course, the men's. Selection Sunday was, well, Selection Sunday this past Sunday in the evening, and that was very exciting. I, of course, myself, being a Texas A&M fan in general, that was something to witness in general, having to wait all the way until the Southern region was called, and the 10 seed in that Southern region was called as well, because that took a long time to wait. I expected maybe Midwest, maybe around there to play against Miami. For a while, they were expecting Texas A&M to play against Miami, Florida as a 7-10 matchup. We've seen that before this past year, but that didn't end up happening. Thankfully, I think for both fan bases in general. And so Texas A&M, they get to play in Oklahoma City, so that's not bad for a lot of people. For I believe tomorrow is when the Texas A&M Aggies play. We'll make sure about that really quickly. Aggie basketball. Before, yes, indeed, tomorrow at 6:35 p.m. Central Time. So, really I want to get into this really quickly. Is, well, of course, the way that I ended up doing my bracket yesterday, last night to be exact, and I want to share it with you all because this was kind of how I decided to do the bracket, and it's completely fair of how I decided to do it. Let's start off, of course, with the Eastern region, who I ended up having as my champion in the East region. That would be winning, of course, the Elite Eight, the quarterfinals, and that was UConn over the Duke Blue Devils. I think, yes, Duke are a very good team, and the Big Ten have been solid, but in my eyes, I just don't believe that Duke right now have that experience to kind of go through all the way there. Remember, it's a very, very difficult ride for even Duke and none other than the UConn Huskies in the men's side. Because you look at it, Duke, yes, they play against number 16 seed Siena, but then they go and play right in the second round against Ohio State. There's a good chance people are saying that Ohio State may have enough to upset. Now, of course, it's an 8-9 seed, so there's a good chance as well that TCU can end up making it. And if that happens, at least Duke's ride to the Sweet 16 got a little easier. That's how I definitely see it. Now, of course, as for Kansas, they play, and it gets exciting for them because they can make it all the way to that Sweet 16 as well. They face off against California Baptist. Baptist's first time to be in the NCAA tournament in a very long time, I believe. Then they would face off most likely against St. John's, which is a 5 seed. That could be a 5v4 upset as well. So you could be looking at potentially St. John's or Kansas versus Duke, and that's where things get very difficult for the Duke Blue Devils. And then, of course, yes, I still would see Duke beating either team, but then you go into Duke playing against UConn. That's where the fire seems to die down for. It seems like Duke would run out of steam, basically, when they'd face off against the UConn Huskies. And the UConn Huskies would be the winners of the East region, in my eyes. Because you look at it again with Louisville in the first round against USF. You'd expect USF, of course. Well, Louisville could potentially win that one. It's a 6v11. Normally, yes, of course. Would you say pick no upsets? Sure, but there are good chances in that first round that you have those upsets. USF, that's a good team to have a chance to upset them. Then you go into, of course, Michigan State playing against North Dakota State. Michigan State, a 3 seed. That's almost a lock at a second round over North Dakota State from the Summit. Michigan State playing against USF. I chose Michigan State. It just seems like that team has been good enough from the Big Ten to make it to a Sweet 16. And Michigan State playing against UConn, that is a very difficult matchup. But again, it just seems like the UConn Huskies, they unlock something. They unlock something beautiful when it comes to the dance. We've seen it time and time again. And that's where I believe that the UConn Huskies can get back to the Final Four because they kind of open things up. We go on to the next round. We go on to that next side of things, the UCLA, of course, and UCF. UCLA would actually face off against UConn. That's where that would be your second round. UCLA, the Bruins are a solid team, but they have a chance to get eliminated in the first round against a 10 seed UCF. Central Florida. Central Florida is not a bad team. They played in the Big 12. Some say that the Big 12 was not as strong as they have been before, but it's UCLA. They've made some runs before. Then, UConn and Furman. UConn and UCLA, like we mentioned. And then that's how I would see the UConn Huskies being a champion of the East region. How about that Southern region? That South region, where everyone had to wait for their team to be called in that South region to see where they'd be placed. Most likely you're going to have number 1 seeded Florida win the Southern region. Yes, that sounds like it would be a simple choice, but remember, Florida lost in the championship against Vanderbilt. That means something. It doesn't mean as much as you would think just due to the fact of, okay, Florida knew that they were a lock at number 1. Why would you strain your players, give them maybe your starters, give them maybe a little bit more of rest and potentially have an opportunity for that second round. So very interesting indeed. But again, I go back to it. Florida's playing a play-in winner. They're the overall number 1 seed. They play against Iowa. They would most likely play against Iowa in the second round. Now they play against Clemson, though that's very difficult to say that because it's 8 versus 9. So really, yes, you would call that an upset. But again, I like the Big Ten because of the way that how strong they've been this year. But here's where things get tricky. Because Vanderbilt, again, how they got the 5 seed was winning the SEC tournament. Playing against McNeese. The McNeese Cowboys aren't an easy team. But I believe that at least for that strength of how strong Vanderbilt have been this season, they can win that game with no problems and make it, of course, to that second round to play Nebraska most likely. Nebraska over Troy, a 13 seed. I can see that happening. Again, we go back to it. The Big Ten is just that strong. And Vanderbilt over Nebraska as a 5 seed. That's where I think there are some weaknesses. Vanderbilt are that strong. They beat Florida for a reason, even if it was technically Florida's B team. If they were to want to call themselves that. You go down the line, and it's UNC, VCU, of course, in that first round. 6 seed over an 11 seed most likely will happen. And then Illinois versus Penn. Quakers, Cinderella story would end very quickly in the first round because I don't believe that they were expected to win the Ivy League and did that against the Yale Bulldogs, pushing the Yale Bulldogs to none other than the NIT. So that's, of course, something to keep an eye on. But the Fighting Illini, good enough to make it to play UNC in that second round. And then Fighting Illini, I think, would be able to get the job done in that second round. Then, playing against Houston, that's where people would call me crazy. But Illinois, not only to that Sweet 16, but I think they can make it to the Elite 8 because just due to the fact of they're that strong of a team. Again, the conference of the Big Ten is that strong of a conference. Texas A&M gets to play against St. Mary's in the first round. This is where things get interesting. 7 versus 10. It's a very difficult matchup. And here's why I would say you should actually, if anyone's picking a bracket, go for the safe option of picking St. Mary's, California. Because most likely you know more about this one thing. St. Mary's is more of a consistent basketball team when it comes down to it in the West Coast Conference. But they're in the West Coast Conference. They played some great non-conference teams, but when it gets into the conference, their conference is not that strong. We go into this side, Texas A&M. When Bucky McMillan has his team rallied around him, this team is unstoppable. When they are able to hit their threes, full court pressure, take the ball away, score another 3, full court pressure, score 9 straight points. This is a team that is unbeatable. But as we've known, getting later and later and later and later and later into the season, that changed. Something changed with really Texas A&M basketball. And they snuck into this tournament by winning their final 2 games of the regular season. It was versus none other than Kentucky at home and against LSU. And they played sloppy against LSU, winning in triple overtime. That was something to keep an eye on. Then they faced off in the SEC tournament against Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat them and still missed out on the playoffs. Still missed out on the NCAA tournament, might I add. So, yes, I do see Texas A&M losing in the second round. If they were to move on in the first, that's where I will have them pick. But, again, I would say go with the safer option of picking St. Mary's because they're going to be more of a consistent team and most likely will win off of that consistency. That is the truth in my eyes. We go to the Western region. The West region, a very fun one. That's really Arizona, of course, being the 1 seed. They were put perfectly in the West. This is a team that some may say are favorites to make it to the Final Four and to potentially win it all. And so Arizona, from the Big 12, they got that number 1 seed, will play against none other than LIQ. So that's going to be fun. Of course, choose them. Why would you be choosing a 16 seed? It's only happened once ever. From before that year of 2022, it had never happened before. So pick Arizona in that one. Villanova versus Utah State is an 8 versus 9. It can be a coin toss. I would say Utah State just due to the fact of that Big East isn't necessarily the strongest. I just think that's how good the UConn Huskies are. And then in that second round, of course, it's Arizona. I have Arizona, like I mentioned, check that, actually not winning. I have Purdue winning this region. I think that the Purdue Boilermakers can get the upset and the job done to make it to the Final Four. And then Wisconsin, High Point. That's going to be a fun one. 5 seed versus 12 seed. Expect Wisconsin to win. And then Wisconsin would most likely face off against Arkansas. This is where things are interesting. Some can pick Arkansas, but again, I would pick Wisconsin to make it to the Sweet 16. Wisconsin and Arizona in that Sweet 16, you'd choose Arizona in that realm. That's, again, where I come from, is just, yes, the SEC is good. Arkansas have been good, but at the same time, they can collapse at any moment. That whole entire SEC can. That's why I don't have Florida as a national champion either. Go down with, of course, BYU and Texas. So that's a pretty interesting one once again. BYU, of course, Texas having to play yesterday as the play-in winner, and they just won off of a buzzer-beating shot. So it says a lot about how good the Texas Longhorns are this season, and they got in by the skin of their teeth and are trying to make it work, but they had to play in the first 4 in Dayton, so they'll be on a lot less rest heading into that first-round matchup against BYU. BYU, of course, in Texas, a little bit of an old Big 12 matchup, but BYU, the Cougars, I expect to still be victorious, even though it kind of course, changed. And then, of course, BYU would face off against Gonzaga. Gonzaga getting a 3 seed is still crazy to think about. Every single year, Gonzaga are able to get a top 3 seed. Blows my mind because, again, their record just does not, in my eyes, show how good they are. Or not even show how good they are, sorry. Show the record reflects how good they are. That's more like it, because there is a lot more losses that they have had that should have hurt them than helped them. But again, they're a 3 seed. Don't count them out once again, because somehow, some way, they're another team that has magic in the tournament. I expect Gonzaga to go to the Sweet 16, but they would face off against Purdue, and I think the Boilermakers would have that job done and win. And again, against Arizona, defeat them. I could end up changing it. I would say for a lot of people, go for Arizona. I think that because again, you break it down, they have had the toughest schedule really on paper in the Big 12. And so that was, of course, a big job. That was a big deal for them to win the Big 12 as well. Have that tough of a schedule coming up to it, winning. But have they burned out? That is a key thing to always remember. Did Arizona burn off all of their steam in that conference tournament, in that opportunity in the regular season? Or do they have enough to actually make it to the Final Four and potentially win the whole thing? That's always where I come from. So that's how I see Purdue making it to the Final Four. How about the Midwest? The Midwest, I have the Michigan Wolverines winning the Midwest region, because it's always an exciting region here. Michigan Wolverines get to play against the number 16 team, Howard. And then University of Georgia playing against St. Louis. That is a possible upset. I don't expect it to happen because that's how good University of Georgia had been. And so the Bulldogs making it to the second round to face off against Michigan. That's where their run will stop. The Michigan Wolverines, of course, I have Alabama making it all the way through to that Sweet 16 as well. How would they get there? Well, let's start off first with Texas Tech. The Red Raiders, of course, is the 5 seed, played against Akron, and I would have Texas Tech making it to that second round and then having to face off against Alabama. Alabama would still win it. Remember, Alabama is now without one of their star players because it was kicked off the team due to some, not necessarily controversy as much as, well, ended up getting arrested. And that was, news was broken on ESPN, and so that was a whole thing, and it's right after the SEC tournament and all of that, and right before the NCAA tournament. So now he's not eligible at all to play. He was also kicked off the team. So Alabama without one of their players, that's going to be interesting. A big story into it, and that's going to come up as well, especially if number 13 HOF are ahead in that game in the first round. But again, they would most likely face off against Texas Tech, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and Alabama Crimson Tide. That would be a great game. It could go either way. I could see how a lot of people would choose Texas Tech over Alabama, but the Alabama Crimson Tide have also been that good when they're able to control their own tempo throughout the whole entire game. That is key. We move on. Michigan facing Alabama, they would win. How does Iowa State get to that Elite Eight as well? Well, they're a 2 seed. They've been in that Big 12. They played against none other than Arizona in that championship. I think they're that good of a team as well. So we see a lot of those conference tournaments really show how good a team is. And that's why there have been some teams in the tournament that have shown. So that is definitely the truth there. Michigan, of course, getting to that Final Four, or getting to the Final Four will be key, but getting to it by, of course, defeating Iowa State. How do the Cyclones get to that Final Four, or how do the Cyclones get to that Final Eight, that Elite Eight in general? Well, it's a little different. Because remember, Tennessee have to play a play-in winner. That will be decided tonight. They'll most likely win. They'll face off against University of Virginia. This is my biggest upset that I have on the board, is that beating the University of Virginia. This is an interesting take because Tennessee, the Volunteers have not been amazing this season. I have them on the board as an upset just due to, well, you have to, not necessarily have to, but you'd like to sprinkle in a couple of upsets here and there, and I think that is a good upset in general because the Volunteers, again, with Rick Barnes, they have had success under him, and even though this team doesn't seem like they are that team that will make it through, it's a better team than people, I think, would realize when March hits. As one of the key Iowa State women's basketball players said, you don't want to start to play your best basketball in January. You want to start to play your best basketball in March, and that is the truth. And as a 6 seed for Tennessee, it only made their lives a little bit harder for this tournament because they'll have to face off against Virginia if they win the first round, but it's still a big opportunity for them to do it. Now, it would be Tennessee, and then, of course, University of Kentucky they would win their first round playing against Iowa State. And that's why I would say Iowa State would beat the University of Kentucky. They just don't seem like they have the firepower that they normally have had in the past, and that is always, of course, key. And again, yes, the biggest upset would be Tennessee, and the Volunteers, of course, would end up facing Iowa State, and I would see Iowa State as a winner to face off against Michigan and the Michigan Wolverines in the Final Four. Your Final Four for myself, this is how I see it happening and all played out. UConn, Florida, and then Purdue and Michigan, as well as UConn and Michigan in the final, and UConn being victorious. And that would most likely create the double. Not the back-to-back, but the double national champions. Why would I say that? Because the women's team is expected to win the national championship there as well. We're going to take a break. When we return, we will close out this show. And, of course, on our March Madness special. Hopefully you all have enjoyed this. We'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.
Permatemp Personnel Services has been servicing local businesses for the past 29 years.
Leave the hiring to us. Let us become your personal hiring guru.
We have a network of skilled employees to fit your needs.
Your success is our strategy.
Don't hesitate. Call us now.
Standard of excellence has always been Cadillac, so be iconic and drive one. Fruia Cadillac, Brownsville, Texas.
Back we go once again here after, of course, this commercial break. I'm Jacob Young, the Surreal Sports Live Network. We're finishing off the show here at Luke Fruia Buick GMC and Cadillac as it is 2:52 p.m. on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. And again, it's one of the best times of the year, as we talked about in March Madness, of course. We broke down, of course, the full men's basketball bracket, which is always exciting. We may not necessarily have enough time to break down the full bracket for the women's side, but let me tell you about the Final Four and why I see that playing out the way that it does, because it's very exciting indeed. Really, again, people can pick it either way. The UConn Huskies for the women's basketball team trying to go back-to-back. They had Paige Beckers, of course, last year as the #1 pick in the WNBA draft this past offseason. She played, of course, and got picked up. She got drafted by none other than the Dallas Wings, which was big when they were expected to play against Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever as well. That was a big game in general. And just, again, how many players that the UConn Huskies year in and year out have is just absolutely insane. So, of course, we go to it, that pick in general for that Final Four. This is who I have in the Final Four, of course, and this is interesting to say the least. UConn Huskies and South Carolina would end up playing each other in the Final Four, Region 1 versus Region 4. Regional 1 versus Regional 4 to be exact. And I picked UConn over South Carolina. That one's going to be a great game. Don Staley versus Gino Arrieta. That's going to be one of my favorite games of the tournament if it ends up playing out the way that I expect it to. LSU, Texas, that one will be a fun SEC matchup if that happens indeed, because there's a lot of other matchups that can actually happen right before that. Reminder, UCLA is in that region too. They're the regional 2. They are the #1 seed. But LSU and Kim Mulkey, that is a choice. That is a team that is dangerous in tournament time. They've been close. They've won a national championship. Of course, they had a different team with Danger Reese and all these other players, but when it comes down to it, this is an exciting team to watch. Regional 3 is Texas versus Louisville. Most likely of how that would all play out, too. Because remember, you also have the Duke Blue Devils, the women's team. TCU, Iowa, 3v2 in the early round, the round of 32, which is the Sweet 16. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of beautiful games right before in women's basketball. That Final Four is a big toss-up, but in reality, you're either going to see LSU, one of those teams, make it as a 2 seed. You're going to see most likely UCLA make it into the Final Four as that 1 seed. Then all of a sudden it's the 4 1 seeds. And that one's very tough. And that's where I think if it all goes down to all 1 seeds, I think this is where the Texas Longhorns could potentially make it to the championship and possibly win it all this season. You know how I said that on last show, if that TCU are still my choice for the Final Four? Well, TCU, of course, they ended up being a 3 seed, and why I would say that that's not going to be the case anymore is because, well, they have a very, very difficult road to the Final Four as a 3 seed. UC San Diego, they would be able to win that one. But then in that second round, they would face off against the Washington Huskies, still with an opportunity, of course, to get to that Sweet 16. Very good possibility. Sweet 16 to get there to it. But they face off against Iowa. I still have them winning against Iowa. The Hawkeyes, I think that's how good TCU have been this season. And then with the Elite Eight, it's just, well, they face off against South Carolina. So the road does not favor them one bit to make it to that Final Four. That's how I see it on the women's basketball side of things. And like I said, it's most likely going to be all 4 1 seeds or potentially LSU making it through to that Final Four. And of course, before we end the show, I do, as we finish and have wrapped up our talk about the March Madness and the first round games coming up this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Thursday and Friday. I believe Friday, Saturday for women's basketball, and Saturday, Sunday would be the second round games for the men's side. Of course, have to give a couple of shout outs here. 12 Hours of Sebring is this weekend. We have Samantha Tan Racing with Random Vandals Racing this weekend, this Friday, in the Michelin Pilot Challenge. Cars are on track officially today, either as testing or practicing, all of that fun stuff. They had the track walks yesterday for most, if not all, the series, and so that's always exciting. The 12 Hours of Sebring is this weekend. Samantha Tan Racing with Bill Auberlin as well, looking to bounce back from a not necessarily poor first round, just an unfortunate first round where they got caught up in pit lane and got some damage late in some of the runs. It was unfortunate, but they're looking to bounce back from it, and I'm excited for it. Another one to very quickly talk about, shout out to one of our local artists, that is none other than Stars. That's her concert this upcoming Friday in Harlingen. That's going to be a fun one as well. Also, one more shout out. UTRGV women's basketball made it to the WNIT. It's different from the WBIT and the NIT itself. They will play tomorrow, Thursday at 6 p.m. on ESPN+. They travel to Tennessee, and that one should be very exciting once again. So, looking forward to all of that and all of that fun coverage coming up here very, very soon. Just we'll wait and see how that one all will play out. And again, as it is 3 p.m., thank you all so very much for watching. We will see you all very soon. I've been Jake Young. This has been a Real Sports Live presentation